Shabbat shalom, everyone. It is so lovely to see you all, to be here tonight, to be celebrating Shabbat together tonight. I was just commenting to people, I've been sort of in and out all summer, and it's really great to be back and to feel like, okay, we're ready to go for the year. We're ready to start. Even though I know the start of the fall, whether you are in some way involved in a school district or not, the fall, I think for everybody is that time to begin again, especially, of course, for us. We have Rosh Hashanah and we have Yom Kippur, and so I think that, this is sort of the start of it where we say, oh, the holidays are coming, and oh, the school year is starting, and oh, people aren't on vacation all the time anymore, and we sort of get back to a little bit more of a normal rhythm. And so it's such a great time to be here, to be together, to see everyone, and to celebrate Shabbat together. And so we're going to start tonight actually with a nigun. And a nigun is a song without words. So the only words that you need to know are yai and lai. No other words required. So I'm gonna sing it. I think this is probably a new melody. And if it's not new, that's amazing, and you can sing along with me. And if it is new, I'm gonna do it a couple times, so hopefully you can join with me when you feel comfortable. We are going to continue with singing Shir Chadash, and I made the mistake of not writing a page number down, so give me 1 second. 344 is what page we are on. There we go, in the middle of the page.
Hadash.
is my pleasure to invite up Cynthia Ellis to kindle our Shabbat candles tonight.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'chadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We are going to continue with Lecha Dodi, and these psalms, all these prayers that we say before we get to the Baruch Hu, are prayers to help us physically get ourselves ready, emotionally, mentally get ourselves ready to pray for Shabbat, and also to help us welcome in Shabbat. And part of the way we do that is with the words of Lecha Dodi, which are found on pages 20 and 21. And we, in fact, sit for most of Lecha Dodi, but in the last verse, we stand and we face an entrance to acknowledge and to welcome in Shabbat. So we do it because we physically want to welcome in Shabbat and to say, I am glad for you to be here. I am happy that it is Shabbat. Please come in and be Shabbat with me. So we are going to continue with Lecha Dodi. We will do verses 1 and then 9, and at verse 9 we'll rise and face the entrance. Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'niborachad, nishmiyanu el ha'michad. Adonai echad u'shmo echad, v'shemo tiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nekabela. We rise and face the entrance. Holy v'shalom, ateret balam, gam b'simcha u'b'tola, toch emunei am sevula. Holy chala, holy chala. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nekabela. We remain standing as we turn to page 28 for our call to worship the Baruch Hu. La 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 la. Please be seated. We continue reading together on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim bechokma poteach sha'arim uvitvuna meshane itim umachalif et hazmanim umsader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or uma'avir yom umevi layla uma'avdil bein yom uvein layla Adonai tzvaot shemo El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. On page 33, let's read together at the top of the page. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons us, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We continue with the Shema on page 34, and I'll ask if you're able to please rise. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Please be seated. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'elem asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha Veshinantam levanecha v'dibartam bam beshivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam Al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkerum va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Lihiot lachem le'Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem. Let's read responsively on page 39. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. We are going to continue now with Mi Chamocha, which can be found on page 40. Let's turn to page 43. And let's read together at the top of the page. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukkot shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. We are going to continue by celebrating Shabbat, by acknowledging Shabbat and saying we are here to keep and to guard Shabbat together on page 44 with Vishamru. There we go. Helps if I play the right chord to begin, doesn't it? Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat lidorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat lidorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat lidorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. Vishamru We are going to join together now in our Amidah, which begins on page 46, and I will invite you again, if you are able, to please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu. Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekone ha'akol, vezocher chaste avot v'imahot, umevi geula livnei v'neihem, leman shemo be'ahava, melech ozer umoshia umagen, Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham, vezrat Saram, Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechaye metim atah rav lehoshia, morid hatal, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye metim berachamim rabim, somech noflim verofech oholim, umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha ba'al gevurot umido melach melech meimihi tu mechaye umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atah le'achayot metim Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hametim. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, ukdoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please be seated. On page 57. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and to do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance, and let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. On page 59 at the top, let's read together. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us, so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. We continue now with Shalom Rav on page 60.
Shalom Rav,
Before our silent prayer, we take a moment to think about those in our community who are in need of healing, whether that's healing of mind or body or spirit. And this week, our community thinks of Rabbi Bruce Goldwasser, Rabbi Fred Wenger, Arnold Zahn, James Koenig, Nyla Shmeta, John Eulenberg, Chris Novak, Ann Cantor, Stephen Tatiner, Jeff Williams, Julie Kalwat, Sonia Maria Reimar Miller, Carol Pretnar, Denise Fleischer, Clara Williams, Frederick Bryan, Rachel Basio, Bianca Spala, Gershon Ben David, Ricardo Rodriguez, John Wilkerson, and all who suffer whom we know not by name. Mi sheberach avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, ve'imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech v'yirapeh et kol cholei Yisrael, v'yishlach lahem bimhera refuah shlema, refuat hanefesh u'refuat haguf, v'nomar, Amen. May God, who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all who are stricken. May the Holy One of Praise mercifully restore them to health and to vigor. May God grant them health of body, health of spirit, and of mind, and let us say, Amen. We continue now on page 243 with the words of Misha Berach. We are going to take a moment now for silent prayer and reflection, using either the words of our hearts or the words of the pages in front of us. is my pleasure to invite up Langston Hughes to lead us in our prayer for the country on page 258, followed by Simon Ellis to lead us in our prayer for Israel on page 259.
O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep your eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to care of the earth. May we never be lazy at the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways we have to serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen.
O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread it over the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
So I thought what we would do tonight, since we're not doing a Torah service, is that we're going to do a text study. So you all should have received a piece of paper when you came in. If you didn't get one, I think we have plenty in the back. MJ has some. Very good. So you're welcome to grab one if you don't have one, or look on with your neighbor. And I thought this Torah portion is really interesting. And part of what's interesting is usually, we rabbis like to talk about the same thing over and over and over again. And so there's one phrase in the Torah that we like to talk about a lot in this Torah portion. And that phrase is tzedek, tzedek, tirdof. Justice, justice shall you pursue. So I decided, since we like to talk about it so much, we should talk about something else tonight instead. And what we're going to talk about is sort of a little known thing that happens in the Torah. And it's the idea of what are called cities of refuge. And this is a concept that we don't really have in the modern day world, and is interesting, I think, for us to consider for a lot of reasons. So we'll start by looking at the text from tonight, which is the first paragraph, Deuteronomy 19, 1 through 7. And it says, "When God, Adonai, has cut down the nations whose land your God is assigning to you, and you have dispossessed them and settled in their towns and homes, you shall set aside 3 cities in the land that Adonai is giving you to possess. You shall survey the distances and divide into 3 parts the territory of the country that Adonai has allotted to you, so that any man who has killed someone may have a place to flee. Now, this is the case of the killer who may flee there and live, one who has slain another unwittingly, without having been an enemy in the past. For instance, a man goes with another fellow into a grove to cut wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree, and the axe head flies off the handle and strikes the other so that he dies. That man shall flee to one of these cities and live. Otherwise, when the distance is great, the blood avenger, pursuing the killer in hot anger, may overtake him and strike him down. Yet he did not incur the death penalty, since he had never been the other's enemy. That is why I command you, set aside 3 cities." Sounds like something that's out of actually a novel, with a story and everything in it, but this is directly from our Torah portion this week, right? And basically what it's saying, if somebody has committed manslaughter, right, they've unintentionally killed someone else with their actions, usually what we know this from earlier on, right? We have what we call Hammurabi's Code, where we read an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? So if I kill person X, then the family of person X has the right to kill me, right, is essentially what that is. But here what they're saying is there's an exception to the rule. And that exception is if you accidentally, unwittingly kill someone, and they, the judges have found you to have done this unwittingly, right, unintentionally, then you can go to a city of refuge instead. And in that city of refuge, you are safe. The person who might want to avenge the death of their loved one can't actually come into the city to kill you. It's not allowed. You're sort of protected. So it's like, it's not a prison, and we'll see in a few minutes, because the idea is that people are actually meant to live there and be able to live their lives. They're not imprisoned for doing this, but they have to sort of be separate from parts of society. So it's interesting to think about that this is the way that they differentiated or set aside people who committed manslaughter, right? And in Numbers, this is where we first hear it. We know Deuteronomy is really a repetition of the first 4 books of the Torah, right? And so in Numbers is where we first hear this. And it says, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall provide yourselves with places to serve you as cities of refuge, to which a man who has killed someone, who has slain a person unintentionally, may flee. The city shall serve you as a refuge from the avenger, so that the killer may not die unless he has stood trial before the assembly." I should also note that given when this was written in the Torah, those of us who are female identified in the room are exempt from all of this, and nobody would avenge us and we wouldn't have to flee. So I suppose maybe a little silver lining to not really being included in the Torah. Take it for what you want. And there really are essentially 4 rules for being in a city of refuge, right? You have to be guilty of unintentional manslaughter. Once you enter the city, you can't leave until that the high priest who has heard your court case has died, right? That's the other interesting thing. You don't get a finite sentence. It's not like you're sentenced to live in the city for 5 years. If the high priest, and we'll read about this in a moment, who sentences you to go to the city of refuge dies the next day, you can leave. But if they die in 40 years, you have to stay for 40 years. It's really arbitrary and has to do with the life and health of the high priest much more than it has to do with the criminal act that was committed in that way. Interestingly enough, both Israelites and resident aliens, meaning strangers, can utilize those cities. And as I mentioned before, it's meant to protect the offender from retaliation from the victims' families. And so we have a lot of interesting commentaries on what does this actually mean, and why do we do this, and how do we interact with people who are in the cities of refuge, right? And so there's a commentator, his acronym is Shadal, but it's Samuel David Luzzatto, an early 19th century Italian Jewish scholar. And he wrote specifically about this. In early times, before peoples were organized under a king, ministers, judges, and officers, every family took revenge against other families, and the closest relative of the dead was responsible to avenge his death. The Torah established judges and officers and transferred the responsibilities of avenging a killing from individuals to the community. Now, in the case of a murder, it was possible to mollify the avenger by telling him to leave it to the judges to investigate and execute the killer if found guilty of murder. However, when the killing was unintentional, it was impossible to mollify the avenger and oblige him to watch he who killed his father or brother to remain unpunished. He and his acquaintances would interpret this inaction to be proof that he does not love his father or his brother, since he does not avenge their death. Now, it is impossible to totally uproot this attitude that the lack of vengeance implied a lack of love. The divine wisdom knew that condemning the avenger to death when avenging the unintentional killing would not prevent all or even most of the avengers from avenging the death of their relatives. Therefore, what did the Torah do? It left the avenger the right to avenge the killing of his kin, but designated places of refuge where the unintentional killer could seek protection and in which the avenger was unable to kill him. Right? All of that is which to say that if you're outside of the city of refuge, the family of the person who you harmed can harm you back, can avenge that murder. But when you're in the city of refuge, you are safe, right? You can't be harmed. In fact, the avenger's family is not allowed to come into the city of refuge, right? It's actually a way of protection, saying, Torah is basically saying, we acknowledge that someone's going to try and kill you for this crime that you committed, and so we're going to offer you some protection. The caveat is that you have to live in this city of refuge. You have to be away from your family, but you can truly live there, right? And that's what's interesting, is that they truly could live there. So if you turn the page over, we see, and I'm not going to read through all the text, but we see that in fact, the mothers of the priests provided food to the people living in the city of refuge. Why did they do that? Because they didn't want the people in the city of refuge to pray for the death of their sons, right? Because when the high priest died, they gained freedom from the city of refuge. They could flee, they could go wherever they wanted to, they were free. But the mothers of the high priest didn't want their sons to die. So they said, if we feed you, if we nourish you, if you take care of you, then maybe you won't pray for my child's death. Sort of a twisted way and reason why they are taking care of the people in the city of refuge, right? But there was care that was happening. And what I want to read actually is the third paragraph from the Babylonian Talmud, where it says Masechet Makot 10a, because this is interesting to consider. The sages taught, in the case of a student who was exiled, his teacher is also exiled to the city of refuge with him, so that the student can continue to learn Torah with him there. As it is stated, and he shall flee to one of those cities and live, from which it is derived, perform some actions for the unintentional murderers, so that life in the city will be conducive to living for him. Since Torah study is an integral component of life, arrangements must be made to ensure continuity in that facet of his existence. Rabbi Ze'era says, from here one learns that a person should not teach a student who is not fit, as that may result in the teacher following the student into exile. Right? So it leads us to this interesting question, because we're supposed to teach every child according to their way, and we're supposed to teach every person, right? And here we have in the Talmud, it's saying, if you don't think that someone's fit to learn, or you think that maybe accidentally they're going to murder someone, don't teach them, because you're going to have to go to the city of refuge with them also, right? That's the first part of it. The second part of it is, even when you have to go into the city of refuge, you still have to be able to live, to get basic needs, right? If you look above, one of the things they talk about is where these cities of refuge have to be located. They have to be located near water, near access to water and food, so that people can be sustained, right? They're meant to be able to actually live just within the walls of the city, right? So we sort of have this conundrum. Do we treat every person according to who they are and respect them and not presume anything on them? And if they end up as somebody who's an unintentional murderer, we have to follow them into the city of refuge? Or do we say, well, I'm not going to go near it just in case they become somebody who commits manslaughter? I like to think that we're not going to assume what people may do, and that we have the best of or assume the best of intentions with people, that we would teach them and interact with them and know that if something happens, they have a place to go, right? That in this case, what it's saying is, for this particular type of incident, that the death penalty isn't warranted, and that in fact they should live, and they do have to serve some time, right? They go to the city of refuge. It is away from their family. It's different from what they know and what they love, and yet it is a place for them to live and thrive and still continue on. So it's an interesting way to think about, in the context of the Torah, in the context of us seeking justice, what do these cities of refuge really mean for each of us? And of course, we don't have cities of refuge in today's world, but what is the equivalent that we could have? What could it look like? What would it look like if we had some sort of equivalent to the cities of refuge to rehabilitate people, or to offer them a place to go, so that, you know, justice isn't avenged in a violent sort of manner? I don't have the answers, certainly, but I think it's an interesting thing for us to consider tonight and going forward, and as we enter into a new year. What do cities of refuge really mean for us in our world today? So I will conclude with that. Shabbat Shalom. And it is my pleasure to invite up our board member to share some announcements with us.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Ricardo Martinez. Here are some announcements. Thank you to our usher, MJ Duhan, our greeter, Rachel Wood, and our security team. The first day of religious school and our congregational barbecue, sponsored by Brotherhood, is coming up Sunday, August 27th. Come out for a heaping helping of great food and community. Register and learn more about our high holiday services and programs at mycec.org/HH, which is probably for high holiday. For more information on upcoming events, check out our weekly happenings email. And please join us after services for a wonderful oneg in the social hall. Shabbat Shalom.
We are going to begin to conclude our service with Aleinu on page 282, and I will invite you, if you are able, to please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula l'yotzer bereshit, shelo asanu k'goyei ha'aratzot, ve'lo samanu k'mishpechot ha'adamah, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, ve'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Please be seated. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yehi Adonai echad u'shemo echad. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who have died at this season and in years past. And on this Shabbat, we remember Bill Good, father of Robin Carlini, Cyrilla Hirsch, mother of Bonnie Warner, Cynthia Verzi, sister-in-law of Maureen Headington, Joseph Friedman, father of Susan Leftwich, Jean Hirsch, grandmother of Wendy Peck and Deborah Cox, Meta Feist, mother of Ellen Mandel, Beatrice Weinstein, aunt of Craig Mandel, Manuel Rosen, uncle of Judith Stein, Irene Carline, cousin of Judith Stein, Bessie Shapiro, aunt of Michelle Miller, Fanny Geller, mother of Cecile Wolochuk, grandmother of Cheryl Bogelub, Al Gorin, grandfather of Beth Spenedel, great-grandfather of Jacob and Hannah Spenedel, Elaine Kolber, grandmother of Heather Levine, Saul Retzky, grandfather of Joanne Gallagher, Mary Lou Pyatt Jackson, mother of Leslie Gantner, Rosemary Snyder, mother of Jennifer Snyder, Marilyn Cohen, mother of Barbara Fidlow, Burton Lichterman, father of Marla Friedman, Helen Sikora, mother of James Sikora, Norman Yellen, husband of Wendy Yellen, father of Lindsay, Matthew, and Joshua Yellen, Zafira Asayag, aunt of Nelson Hanan, Rabbi Edward Feldheim, father of Deborah Cairo, grandfather of Brandon, Josh, and Alex Cairo, Seal Goldman, grandmother of Julie Mandrew, Natalie Kay, cousin of Jordan Trofimo, Marjorie S. McGrath, mother of Margaret McGrath, Inez Turoff, grandmother of Joseph Turoff, Joseph Mash, and we mourn the recent passing of Jay Field, father of Michael Field, grandfather of Claire, Ben, and Julia Field, Joshua Neil Burstein, son of Jay Burstein, brother of Michael Burstein, and nephew of Karen and Scott Burstein, and Ray Colasa, stepfather of Martha Tatiner, step-grandfather of Sophia Tatiner. We join together now as one community on page 294 for the Mourner's Kaddish. Please rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabam, be'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mivarach le'olam u'lamei almayam. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasem. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudesha b'richum. Le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Osei shalom bimromav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and to all Israel, to which we say, amen. Please be seated. We are going to conclude our service with the words of Osei Shalom. This is it's not a new Osei Shalom, but maybe new to our community. We're going to see. However, it's a call and response, so even if you don't know it, it's okay because you're going to learn it. So all you have to do is repeat after me. We are going to now recite Kiddush and Motzi together. If I can find everything. If you would like to follow along with Kiddush, we are on page 5. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Amen. L'chaim. We join together in Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, ha-motzi lechem min haaretz, B'te'avon. May you have a Shabbat filled with joy, filled with peace, and filled with sunshine. Shabbat shalom.